Good evening. Welcome to Board of Trustees meeting for Grambling Township for Tuesday, February 22nd. If we could all rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Robertson, could you call the roll?
I'd be happy to. Trustee Hugo?
Here.
Trustee Fike?
Here.
Trustee Raridan?
Here.
Trustee White?
Here.
Treasurer Kilmer?
Here.
Myself, here, of course. Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
7 members present, a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for an approval of the agenda. You'll notice that in the consent agenda, we added a couple of things to last minute. We're in need of an individual to serve on our Board of Review and also to have an alternate. And there's some training taking place fairly quickly that we needed to get these individuals approved so that they can go ahead and go through the training for those positions. So yesterday I met with them, and I believe that they'll be great additions to our Board of Review. Danielle in our assessing office helped find these individuals. So
I'll make a motion.
okay, a motion by Sarah Hugo.
This is for the agenda.
Yes.
Motion by Hugo,
Support by Trustee Raridan.
support by Raridan. Trustee Raridan?
Yes.
Trustee Hugo?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
All right, thank you. And now at this time, we'll open the floor for public comment. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and please give us your name and address for our record. So, yes, come on up.
Hi, my name is Dawn Weir, and my address is 10155 Deer Drive, and that's in Richfield Township. I come to you guys tonight because I'm a local attorney, and I've decided to run for the Genesee County Circuit Court Judge position that is up this year. Judge Beagle will be retiring at the end of the year because he has aged out, and it's an open seat, and I've decided to run for that spot. Just real briefly to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a lifelong resident of Genesee County. I actually lived in Grambling Township for a little while I was going to U of M Flint. But even when I went to law school, I lived in good old Genesee County and commuted, so I've been here my entire life. I went to U of M Flint, and I went to the University of Detroit Mercy Law School, and I've been a lawyer for over 20 years now. I live in Richfield Township with my 3 beautiful children, and just like I said, wanted to come out and introduce myself, and if anybody had any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them, but if not, I'm going to sit down so you can continue your meeting.
You give me the address once again where you reside.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 10155 Deer, D-E-E-R-E, like John Deere.
Deer
And
Drive.
the Deer Drive, yeah. And then
That's
Davison,
Davison mailing?
48423, yes.
Very good, thank you.
So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much for coming this evening. Anybody else wish to make public comment? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Konezny, K-O-N-I-E-C-Z-N-Y, and I live at 912.
Say
I'm
that
sorry,
again,
what?
please. K-O-N.
I-E-C-Z-N-Y. And I live at 9126 Large Court, Grand Blanc. And I am here after being extremely frustrated with the situation in my neighborhood. I've been living here for the past 20 years in this particular neighborhood. And part of the issue is that we have, we back up to the woods. And we live to the north part of our neighborhood. And so when everyone gets excited that it's warm outside and we get a lovely breeze, we get your trash. We get your recycling. We get so much of it that one time I went out and I picked up 2 full trash bags from one trash day. Now, we don't have fences that block our side yard from our neighbors to the next neighbor where the road is. And I don't want that. I don't want to put up a fence to keep the trash out of my yard. Now, I understand we can't control the wind, But we can control breaking down boxes, putting out trash bags from, we'll say, any of our local grocery stores in our recycling bins. Now, you say this may not happen. How does it get there? It gets in my trees, literally above where I can reach. In order to get these bags down, I have to cut the limbs down. That's not fair to me. 20 years I've been dealing with this, and I've had enough. Last trash day, last week, was so windy. Boxes aren't broken down. You'll see the names on the boxes. I can take them back to my neighbors. I don't want to be that person that angers my neighbors and puts their junk back on their porches to say, hey, look at this is what it is. I raised 4 kids here. 4 kids went through Grand Blanc High School, and each one of those kids have spent their time cleaning up my backyard, along with me and my husband, Bill. We're tired of it. We think there needs to be something done. I called this morning, and I spoke with Lynn, and she told me about the recycling program. My issue is the things that aren't acceptable in our recycling program in Grand Blanc are being put in here. Now, she sent me this email with what is recyclable, so I know what's recyclable. I know this more so because of my kids going to college telling me about Terra recycling and what you can't put in your recycling bin. I'd like everybody to know pizza boxes are not recyclable, and they are not fun to pick up after it snowed or rained on them. That's what I get to do. I get to go in my backyard and I get to clean up everybody's trash, your milk jugs. I had prescription, because people think paper. We'll just throw it in there. Prescriptions I'm picking up, pill bottles, because it got windy. Now, like I said, I don't want to put up a fence. I want a solution, and I'm not sure what it is. These bins aren't a solution. They come in my yard. One time I had 3 recycling bins, 3 recycling bins. And I thought to myself, did anyone notice that their recycling bin is gone? Trash cans, we put them in the middle of our cul-de-sac so someone will come and claim them. It's not our responsibility to clean up after everybody, but I'm not sure what to do, and I think there needs to be more. Now, when I spoke with Lynn, she explained to me that we get these bins from the company, is it Altera or Mterra, and she said they're junky bins. When they break, we just replace them. And I think to myself, why? It's recycling. Why don't we have something that works? Even the blue recycling bins that you buy at Home Depot are top-heavy, they fall over, and they blow all over my yard. And if you see the pictures, I'm not just picking them up around trees, I've got bushes. I need to wear protective eyewear and have a grabber in order to get most of this trash out of my yard. I have an acre of land. And I'm tired of it, and I don't know what to do. And I'm coming to you to ask you for your help and support, because I know we can't control the wind. But if we could close up a bin, somehow make it worth our while, I won't have to do this for the next 20 years, because I don't plan on moving.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Knosny. We do have bins for sale that have a lid on them, and we have those on display out here, but
And when the wind blows those over, everything blows out. Now, these bins are nicer than the ones you get at Home Depot. They're not top-heavy.
right?
And that's what you need, is something that is bottom-heavy so that it doesn't blow over.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your concern for the neighborhood and cleaning it all up. We're neighbors, although mine doesn't blow down that far. So,
Is there a department that will come and clean up my backyard?
no,
Nothing.
not on private property.
So is there something I can do with my neighbors?
I would encourage your neighbors not to put their recycling out when it's that windy. When it's that windy, they might want to keep it in their garage if they have bins or what have you that are able to tip over that easy.
Is there anything that can be sent out to all of us in Grand Blanc Township to let them know that?
To not put them out when it's windy.
Yeah.
Problem is, if you set it out the night before and then it's windy the next day, it's kind of hard, but we could probably put something out there.
Nasty neighbor down. Although, trust me, I've thought about taking my rolling trash can and putting everyone's recycling in it and then just putting it out to the road, because all of that I pick up in my backyard is going in the trash can. And trust me, I recycle. Mine is full, I pack it, I break down my boxes.
Right. Okay, we'll talk about it and see what we can come up with to help. Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to make public comment this evening? Okay, seeing no further public comment, we'll bring it back here to the board. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Trustee Fike makes that motion, supported by Trustee White.
Trustee White. Motion by Fike, supported by White. Consent agenda. Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Under old business, item A, strategic plan update, Saginaw Street corridor improvements. Mr. Lemata?
This evening, we'll give you a report on the progress that were made on the Saginaw Street corridor improvements. There's a couple of items of note. I don't want to steal Melissa Roberts' thunder. She will give you some results from the survey that went out to the North End business owners that attended the meeting, and then we'll follow that up. Attorney Laddie has provided some information. You guys all have that in front of you, and David will kind of give you an update on that after Melissa.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We had a meeting, as you know, back in the fall with the North End business owners. At that time, we collected email addresses from those who attended and encouraged anyone that knew of someone else with a business along Saginaw Street from Hill Road to Maple to submit their email address. So we sent out a survey. The different things that we asked them, as you can see from, put this on all of your, at all your spaces. Asked them if they would like facade or exterior image grants or loans sponsored by the township, special assessment district to upgrade lighting and or sidewalks, lobby the county or state to make Saginaw Street a boulevard versus current high-speed throughway, better signage or signage recognizing that corridor specifically, review existing sign ordinances for a more business-friendly approach, or create a corridor improvement authority or a TIF district. So signage seemed to be what was most important to the business owners. Better signage for their district, and then also reviewing our existing sign ordinance for that. Third was the facade and exterior image grants or loans sponsored by the township. So I think those are the things that we're going to start focusing on right away and come up with a plan for those business owners, and then have a meeting again in March or late March, early April to discuss what we've come up with.
So the signage we're talking about here, it looks like, Ms. Roberts, pretty much a tie between better Grand Blanc Township signage, or signage recognizing the North Saginaw corridor as a district business. And then the other one is review existing sign ordinance. That would be for businesses. I guess, you know, we ran into one situation where there's multiple businesses on one property, I think, and there wasn't enough space to put, or I think our ordinance doesn't allow for multiple signs or something like that. So I think what we need to look at is an adjustment for that. And we were talking that we can have we can set up our sign ordinance for a particular area, right, Mr. Laddie? That
Yeah.
in this particular area, we could have a little bit of a variation since with the older lots, some of the things that we require, you know, as far as setbacks and whatever, when somebody's building new, aren't going to happen up here. I mean, unless you tear down the building and rebuild it. So in order to allow some of that signage, we're gonna have to see what actually works here. But I did receive a communication from the commander at the VFW. I think it's the VFW, is it VFW or American Legion? VFW. And they had some ideas on signage as well, for welcoming people to the township. And it actually included an arch across the, did I send that?
Yes, you did.
An arch across Saginaw Street, which was innovative. And
Right.
so we have the business owners thinking of how we can make this area more appealing.
And that is an area that doesn't have a welcome to Grand Blanc sign as you come in. So some sort of monument sign, or I think an arch might be a little bit pricey, but
It looked kind of similar to the one that the city had,
Yeah.
kind of a combination between that and the arches in the city of Flint downtown.
right, yeah, it was a very neat design.
And the signage, I have had some communication with the road commission on our other signs for branding the township that we have back here. But we're gonna have to probably play around with, they want it to be a green background, but might have some ideas on how we add some green to it. That be a green background. There might not be a whole lot of green background, but could be.
A little green on there.
Yeah, around the edge.
There is some green.
We edge the thing in green, it's on green.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Robert. Anything else on Saginaw Street corridor that you had with regard to this
Yeah, I have something.
survey?
So the businesses were polled, and this was how they felt. They
Yes.
don't seem to like this TIF district thing. I mean, that's the lowest on the,
Out of these items, it looks like it.
now, so with that, we got a whole thing from David about the TIF.
Well, you also notice on the second page of the survey,
Yeah,
individual comments that, that individuals listed on the survey as well. So, promote north of Hill Business Corridor, beautification through installing American flags, light poles to display welcoming flags, holiday lighting, upgrade landscaping, flower beds, flower pots. We are a major entrance to the community, we need to dress it up. Another one, more infrastructure for things like roadside foliage, beautifications. Next item, aesthetics such as landscaping and general cleanup of trash along Saginaw Street. Do something with vacant buildings, better public transportation. I don't know what they mean by that. I think it's on a bus route already, but maybe not. Promoting growth and filling empty buildings. Enforceable ordinances to discourage two-stake small signs popping up all over the township. Boy, I don't want to tell our code enforcement that. They're out every day picking those up. Work with current businesses to make business fronts more appealing as the entrance to Grand Blanc Township. Examples, highway signage, what have you. They specifically mentioned the fish building and the highway sign company frontage, empty buildings in VFW. Number 9, that with the state of our country and economy, none of these things mean anything to me. I'm not paying any more money for any of this. Can't believe you were even worried about this when businesses are closing and can't find workers. How about working on lowering taxes? That would be something we could all get behind. How about charging our zip code, changing our zip code so we can get lower insurance? Okay, well, interesting perspectives, so anything else on the survey? So we're gonna go over Mr. Laddie's document here. So go ahead, Mr. Laddie.
Well, thank you. And so when I look at the survey, I don't, none of these things are necessarily exclusive, right? So we could do all of them. And I'm also glad to see that they want some more immediate activity or efforts on our part, and that many of them are administrative, so that's good, right? Because we can do it quickly and it doesn't cost money. Creating the Corridor Improvement Authority is something that is going to take, as you can see, it takes a lot of administrative effort. You're really creating an additional entity. You have to staff it. You have to pay for plans, improvement plans, and TIF studies. And as we found out in our DDA, that process is spread out over about a 6-month period or so. You have to get people involved who want to stay involved in the administration of it. You have to put out some money. I think, I want to say, did we spend somewhere around $35,000 or so just to really get our TIF documents in place and our development plan in place for the DDA. And the advantage we had with our DDA is right off, the reason that we did it so quickly is because Dennis went around and was able to find some opportunities where if we got this thing in place, we would be able to immediately recognize some gain. That is not going to be the case here unless something fabulously unexpected and great happens here. But the point is that we can get this thing in place and it can grow in the future. And again, the whole benefit of it is that instead of sending large percentages of our tax money, our taxpayers' tax money to Genesee County for the things they spend it on, it stays in the district. It can go to make some improvements, big and small, that can benefit residential and commercial. And so it might be a nice thing to consider in addition to the other things that these folks are asking for. We have a wide range of things we can spend the money on. We can buy buildings, we can condemn, we can tear down buildings, we can rebuild buildings, we can do almost anything to improve the economic status of whatever district, whatever the area of the district is. I think you can see by the requirements that Saginaw Street will clearly qualify. It's got a major arterial freeway. We've got, or not freeway, state highway. We've got zoning that's been in place that meets the criteria. We could probably do it also in Door Highway. We could include residential, commercial. I don't know if we have any industrial there, but we really got we fit the mold very well for this area. So what you might consider, I think, is in addition to all the other things, and again, the ones that can be done easily, administratively, and help, this might be something of a creation of a piggy bank that might have a 10-year or 15-year benefit down the road. It can help pay for a lot of the things that people have mentioned here. The downside, again, is it takes some upfront money and it takes some administrative effort. And I'm not going to speak for Dennis and Supervisor Bennett, but they do most of the work at the DDA level. And I think, I don't know if we can ask them to do more. We might have to figure out how we can get that administered so that it doesn't take too much time from township employees, but also doesn't have a payroll and become expensive. So it's something I think to consider in the background on this. And there are other things, obviously, that folks want that are going to maybe be quicker and easier. But I think you should not dismiss the idea of a corridor improvement authority, knowing that it's again, it's going to bear some long-term fruit and maybe take a little work up front. I was a little surprised to see that people would be more interested in creating a special assessment than reaping the benefits of a TIF project, but I have to assume that they're maybe not clear on the
Right, that's,
economic benefits of a TIF.
Exactly.
A special assessment.
Yeah.
So that's there if you ever decide you want to implement it.
so yeah, just so for the public, the difference between the TIF and the special assessment district, the TIF is not going to cost you any additional money.
Right.
Special assessment stays in that area, but it's going to cost you extra money.
Right.
So, one of the things I think we need to have some long-term things and some short-term, and it looks like, they want to focus on some of the things that they want to see immediately, which that's good, because in the meantime, we can be working on some of the longer-term things like this if we choose to go down that route.
I think, and just as an aside, I think just from a code enforcement side, this kind of thing helps us because one of the things we talked about was we wanted a benefit, and then we wanted, I don't know if we use carrot and stick, but we want to make sure that if we are encouraging people to benefit their properties, that they don't have problems with blight or trash, or that their efforts aren't mitigated somehow by somebody else's lack of effort. And so I think that we can keep that in mind with these comments and maybe try to focus our code enforcement.
Well, I know our code enforcement are very passionate, and I really appreciate the job they're doing. I talk to them several times a week, and they're passionate about what they do, and I'm very appreciative of what they do, and they try not to give out tickets. They try to get compliance, and I think for the most part, they get that. They're very people-friendly individuals, and they work with somebody to get compliance. I am disappointed, though, not in them, but it seems like some of the time we're stymied by the court. That part of our problem is that while we try to have higher standards, when we go and ask for some help on cleaning up what we think is blight, compared to some other parts of the county, it's not blight. I mean, it's just somebody not putting things away. But I think, you talk to people around here and they'll say, no, that's clearly blight. We have a place down here right on South Saginaw Street that has all kinds of stuff sitting behind their building right now. It's on the west side of Saginaw Street, just a little bit north of Thomas Appliance. And it looks like they emptied out a pole barn and all kinds of things sitting out there. And I know David's been working with the court to try and get some compliance, but they keep wanting us to send more and more letters to them, right?
No, so we have a default against them. So
Really?
that's owned by a LLC in
Okay.
County. We have a default against them. And the judge will entertain my motion for equitable
Okay.
relief. And equitable relief is, we're gonna go in there and clean all that out, put the bill on the taxes. So
Good.
that is in the process.
Okay.
And
Good.
the owners did not.
Right.
And it's interesting, Ms. Weir's here to listen to this part of the argument too, because we rely on the district court because of the creation of municipal civil infractions gives the court the authority, the district court the authority, to actually exercise some equitable relief that used to be reserved for the circuit court. So now, district court judges can order things to be done to properties, and then we have methods for the collection of the fees. But it's relatively underused, and it's a little bit out of the wheelhouse of a typical district court administration. And so, obviously we're hoping that
Right.
Grand Blanc standards are gonna filter in there and take hold.
Exactly. Well, and for the public too, they don't understand that, the process takes a while, that why isn't this cleaned up? And it's because it's making its way through the court. Well, you told me that 2 months ago. It's like, well, it's still making its way.
It's a lot better than the circuit court.
Right.
We used to have to file them in circuit court, and what you just described, a 2-month process could be a 1.5-year process. So
Right.
it's better than it was, but it's not perfect.
Sure. Okay. Yes.
I know this is an item for discussion, maybe not an action item, but I guess my observation, would be, let's do the low-hanging fruit on the survey that people seem to agree with, the administrative things that David mentioned as an indication of our willingness to be responsive to the folks that replied to the survey. And once they see the effort from us, then maybe that changes the equation for people on other issues. But if it's easy enough to accomplish with our existing staff and existing efforts, our own efforts, then let's do that. That's the first thing I would suggest, and then see what comes.
So the signage, we're working on the signage. Ms. Roberts is working on signage for our branding for Grand Blanc Township and what we're going to do at the entryways for that. So that'll be coming before this board eventually again to discuss. But as far as the signage for the businesses, that's something that our planning commission is going to need to take a look at, right, Mr. Lemina?
Absolutely, and we need to identify different areas for signage as part of our zoning ordinance. If you think of the corridor that we have along I-75, we have the same basic signage regulations that whether you're up here on the north end on Saginaw Street or you're driving by I-75. And as you know, going back to Security Credit Union, their site plan approval, some of the challenges with the signage, it can't be the same. We can't have a one-size-fits-all. So we do need to start looking at it as different districts and what that, will allow. We try to regulate, especially things like billboards in the middle of the township and things like that. Again, when it comes to signage, you can't regulate the content. You can regulate, the size and shape and that kind of thing. We need to allow bigger signage on I-75. Everyone's flying by at 70 miles an hour, and clearly having a lower profile sign isn't going to work there. But we also don't want to open it wide up here. I think we can create a corridor district or apply some of those standards across. Planning and Zoning Administrator Smith is going through that as part of our overall update process. And I think seeing how these guys, not only just better Grambling Township signage, but also the idea of, identifying that corridor, I think that could be a relatively simple fix for us to really identify, like, hey, this is the, the North Saginaw Street Corridor Business District, or whatever it's going to be called, would be relatively easy and allow some of those signage. Of course, they're probably going to be green with white letters per the Genesee County Road Commission, but that's okay. I mean, it's just informational signs that we start to really recognize it as a district. And if we can do some of these things, we didn't really talk much about the facade exterior improvement grants, but I think that is something that we can kick off and then see where that goes. That could be a big part of it. If we start to designate the district, get signage that designates the district, the enforcement actions on like the issue that we had down the street, it could go a long way towards getting it cleaned up. And again, I agree with Dave on the creation of the corridor improvement authority. Let's not throw it out offhand. The money would be very helpful, but we need to make some immediate improvements if we really want people to grab it and see that you're moving forward on your strategic plan versus longer term waiting for the funds to come in on the Corridor Improvement Authority. I mean, it could have a negative balance for the first 5 years if taxable value goes the other way. But it's still worth pursuing to get it on the books, because 10 years from now, who knows what we could do, whether it's signage or sidewalks or lighting or any of those things. I still think we should continue to pursue it.
So facade and exterior image grants or loans sponsored by the township, that actually is like the second most important on this list, because the other two are pretty much tied. But and we're already in the process of doing the signage for the township. But so with that, we would just we would designate a certain amount of money and put it in a revolving loan fund for a period of time. I don't know, what are you familiar with? How many years would they be able to borrow it for? And
Yeah, we have to set up all those parameters, and it's certainly, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's certainly a lot of communities out there that already have those things. Typically, they're smaller. You're not, giving away $100,000. You're talking about doing, depending on what your comfort level is, $2,500 or, something in that nature to improve the facade or the appearance of the outside of the building. You guys could set it at whatever you want, $2,000, $5,000. As far as having the payments or the interest, it can be low interest, but it has to be at least comparable to whatever interest we would be losing, on our investments. But still, it'd be a low interest payback, and then the amount. I mean, generally, you want it back within the first couple of years. It's not going to be a long-term thing. It's really to give somebody a quick shot. They don't have to go to the bank for financing. They can improve the exterior facade of their building, whether it's putting greenery, whether it's paint, whether it's a canopy. I mean, something to make it, just to improve the thing. And I think putting those things hand in hand, so let's define it and call it that this is the business corridor. Let's get some signs up that note when people drive through that this is the business corridor. We're trying to create that sense of place, a distinct sense of place, so people start to take a little bit more pride in how their business looks while I'm part of the corridor, and then really develop something that either we give plaques or we recognize them at a board meeting when they do make improvements, so that we really highlight the fact and give them a little bit of free advertising and some acknowledgement that they took that extra step to improve their look of their business in our new business corridor. And sometimes that recognition alone, again, low impact from a financial standpoint from us, but a real good impact on maybe starting to change the image of the north end.
Yes, Mr.
So, we're doing signs. This thing, like signs, number one, let's move forward with, getting some signs up there. The question is, the one I love to ask, what are we gonna call it? North Saginaw Business Corridor sounds a little, I don't know. Let's think
Well-
of something, Scottville or something, I don't know.
Well, we can always
Something a
ask,
little more jazzy.
we can always ask, it's a little bit easier than Lemanaville, right?
Well, Lemanaville, it could
But,
have,
we can ask business owners when we get them together again.
yeah.
And the other thing is that I think we also want to, we met with the ones on Saginaw Street here, but I think we could probably include Fenton Road, north of Hill Road, as well as Dort, north of Hill Road, and kind of make it this full north area. I've got too many connotations attached to north end that I don't know that I don't like that term, but maybe others do, but I'd like to come up with something other than something that has north end in it, but I don't know, North Grand Blanc Business Area or something, I don't know. But maybe Paul has some ideas.
I don't have ideas on the name, but I mean, I guess I don't know why we couldn't do some of these short-term things and plan for the long-term at the same time. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And I get that we're not gonna really, this isn't gonna pay for anything. The corridor plan won't pay for anything for 5-10 years, who knows, but eventually it will. I mean, it's like putting money in, assuming there's good interest rate, put a little in the bank and then 10 years from now, we'll see where it's at, kind of
Yeah.
thing. I mean, we'll probably all be gone by the time it pays for anything, but
I won't be.
I'm not planning on it,
I'm not
but
going anywhere.
we may not be on the board.
There you go.
We have to be precise in there.
one of the things too, I think if we're going to do something with the facade or any of these things, somehow we need to have some kind of consistency too, I think, or some kind of overall plan so we don't end up with a hodgepodge of, hey, this guy has a awning out in front and this person has something that looks like Bavarian theme and I don't know if that's something that Ms. Bain could help us with from planning side or not, but I know we have that huge study and I mean, I'd love if we won the lottery to be able to enact that thing with boulevards and all that kind of thing, but I don't see that happening.
You're not voting for the Bavarian theme, are you? Because I think it's been done.
That's been done, and they do it better than
Yeah.
everybody.
Maybe Norwegian or something. But I just like make sure that we keep that in mind, that we have some kind of consistency or something, just so we don't end up with something outlandish that we're funding, but, so, yeah, Mr. White, I agree. I'd like to see us move forward on the signage thing, even on getting more research on some ideas on the revolving loan for facade, but at the same time, looking at what we can do to build some consistency and get some agreement amongst business owners of here's what the overall, what we want to build towards. It might be 10 years from now before it looks the way we want it to, but at least when somebody does a facade, it's kind of going in the direction of where we see things going. I'd hate to have somebody put a bunch of money into something. We're all like, oh my gosh. Not that we can dictate, exact colors and all that kind of thing, but if we're gonna fund it, it seems like we could help direct some of it too.
So I think for follow-up then, we'll schedule that meeting and try to get everybody in March from the original group, get the same invitation to come in. If you want to expand it, let us know and we'll do that. Then we'll start to explore that, establishing that revolving loan fund and make some recommendations on that. We can discuss it at that meeting. So when this next comes before the board, that should be the follow-up, is that we'll be looking at the signage issues and have an update from the planning department on that, the revolving loan fund, and then the results of the meeting.
Yeah. Does that, what is the board's thought on expanding it to the Dort Highway area and Fenton Road? Yes, Mr. Ritter?
I just, isn't
David, really, isn't the TIF the low-hanging fruit? I mean, isn't that the easiest thing to get going, and it doesn't cost anybody?
Well-
Doesn't cost the businesses?
It doesn't cost the businesses anything. It costs you some money and some administrative effort. But yeah, I mean, for the business owners, it is, they won't even know it's there.
Yeah, and like 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road, I mean, it should have accrued something that could benefit them.
Boy, I hope something went really wrong. Yeah, it didn't. But and then to Scott's point, we can do several of these, assuming that they meet that basic criteria of the arterial road, the mixture of zoning. I mean, all of our really our zoning areas, particularly in our combination of residential and commercial with some industrial, they all meet the criteria zoning wise and use wise. As we fan it out a little bit, it might get a little more tricky as you get into more residential areas. But yes, so we can expand it if you want. We can do it in segments. We don't have to do it all at once. And it does seem for the residents to be the obvious choice where they don't have to put any effort in, assuming that you guys are ready to front about $35,000 and roll up your sleeve, or get some folks to come in and roll up your sleeves and work at it.
Because it did get a low score, but I mean, maybe if you guys explain it to them when they have the meeting.
Right. Yes, Treasurer Kilmer?
I think,
Your slide up if you could, just so that people can hear you when they're watching at home.
I think that we should also consider, and I'm not saying that this is the end all or whatever, but the city is also doing different things with their zoning, their whatever, and possibly we should look into coordinating with some of that. That's it.
So I think with regard to, you're going to check on a few different things on that list then. I don't know, what are the thoughts on including the other areas, or do we stick with Saginaw Street?
Well, if I may, Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Dort Highway had always been part of the discussion in, when we've had, the Fenton Road is something new altogether. And I understand the argument that maybe there's more residences involved and that may be more complicated. So I have no objection to Dort, because that's, like I said, it's always been part of the conversation, but I'm not quite sure about, not that I don't want to do good things for Fenton Road, but if that is not quite as cut and dried as the two, Saginaw and Dort, then maybe we should proceed with caution there, or prudence, I guess. That's my thought on the subject.
Okay.
Yeah, I almost think starting with
Yes.
maybe just
Saginaw Street.
Saginaw Street and Dort, and then we'll maybe add Fenton Road at some point.
Okay.
But, start small and see how this goes with signage and.
All right. Mr. White?
I agree, and I would say that Fenton Road is, to some extent, we would need to work with, we would want to work with Mundy Township, because they would have just as much of an interest being the township border, and they have, I mean, there's really no difference between the west side of the road and the east side of the road in any practical purpose.
Okay. All right. So we'll stick with, unless somebody feels differently, we'll stick with Dort and Saginaw Street. Mr. Reardon?
Well, Hill Road is, I mean, it's all part of that. I mean, I would like to see Hill Road included in that, at least to Dort. Or Saginaw, because it goes beyond.
I would go along with that too, because it kind of forms a triangle there.
Because that's all Grambling Township.
From Hill Road north, you're saying?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll have some homework in the next month and get back with the board. Next item on the strategic planning is unfunded liabilities plan.
So to update the board on the unfunded liabilities, we had Matt Taylor, who you all met December 14th meeting. He's our MERS regional manager, the representative for the MERS plan. And he came in last Thursday for a couple of hours, All of the police unions had representatives in attendance. We started off the meeting with Matt. I asked him two goals primarily that we're interested in accomplishing. One is to address the unfunded liabilities, to develop a plan that's going to allow us to pay those down to get us closer to 100% funded. The second goal is to look at the contribution rate. And again, as a reminder, the township's paying 27.46. Your officers are paying 15.46% out of every paycheck to go towards that defined benefit pension plan with MERS. So those two goals in mind, we've got to get we want to get the plan 100% funded, but we also want to address those contribution rates to make it more manageable, because I think it's at a point where if we don't, it's going to become a detriment to recruitment rather than a bonus. And again, we want a plan that is that makes sense for both retention and recruitment purposes. But I can tell you that one of the newest officers that was hired when they received their first paycheck, they had a question about, what this is, what's the 15.46% deduction that's coming out of the check, and it's an eye-opener. So we asked Matt, about those two things, and then we asked to, explore some of the options available. And again, the options aren't necessarily new, pretty much the same options that we reviewed last time if we were to make changes, from bridging the benefit, and by that I mean looking at like the multiplier at a 2.5 down to a 2.25 or a 2.0. We talked about the COLA, which is at a 2.5. You could bridge that down to a 2 or 1.5. Things you can do with the COLA, it only applies the average every 5 years, one time every 5 years. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at bridging that benefit. There's hybrid plans out there. They're less popular than they used to be. For a while they came out and more people were doing a hybrid where it's a combination of defined benefit combined with a defined contribution plan. A lot of municipalities have gotten out of the defined benefit plans and gone strictly to a defined contribution plan. You heard what Matt said to you guys in December about what happens with that, and Dr. Raridan asked a lot of questions. And I went back and even reviewed the meeting again, and I know Dr. Raridan was trying to get Matt to say what happens if you close that division 21, and clearly what happens is we have less people coming in. So if we just close the plan, if the plan's frozen and no one else is coming in, the folks who are still in it are going to see those costs continue to rise, which goes against our goal of lowering the contribution rates. So while we're trying to navigate through this, we're trying to come up with what can we do, what's the options that we have available to us that are going to make the most sense and still allow us to accomplish our goals. So we reviewed just about every one of those. Sergeant Gilbert brought some out-of-the-box ideas that we discussed. That was very helpful. Some we can't do. We're looking into other options. And of course, the other thing that I think is very important that we discuss is the fact of, and I put it into the strategic plan to start with, is the option of an additional millage. And we discussed this 3 years ago. It didn't go anywhere. The board wasn't interested. But my job is to present all the options to get them on the table, so I have to bring that option back up again for your consideration. And if you were to do that, depending on what ballot you wanted on, August or November, clearly, if you were going to do that, I would recommend the August ballot, because I think the sooner it gets out, the better. So then we have to look at when that language is due to the county, which is probably in April or May at the latest. So we have to consider all these options, and if that's even a remote possibility, then we have to think about the language dates to make sure that we're getting it right so we can get it on the appropriate ballot. If you were going to go for a millage, then again, what would the language be? And it has to be very specific about what that language would be. If it's designed to just pay down the unfunded liability, then the language should reflect that you're going to collect them, you're going to ask for 1 mil or whatever that number is, you're going to use it, it's for a 10-year period, and that money will only be used to pay down the unfunded liability of $9.6 million. When it's paid down or you're at 100% funded, you'll stop collecting the millage, or 10 years, whichever comes first. The language has to be very specific. One of the things, are you going to keep the plan open or would you close the plan? So again, consideration, if you're going to ask for an additional millage, is it to keep the plan open? Because if you do and you're trying to pay it down, there's always a possibility that that continues to go because it's all about the assumptions and what the market's doing and everything else. So you might not be able to catch up. Things could change and that rate continues to grow when you're putting the entire millage on it. If you close the plan and go after a millage, now we know that, not that the assumptions can't change on a closed plan, but you have the ability to bond it. If you close the plan, you can bond it. You can bond up to 95%, and then the millage would only be used to retire the bond debt, for example. So some of those are the things that the board's going to have to consider as we move forward. But I wanted to touch base and let you know that we did meet. We did have all three union groups present so that we could all hear the same information from the same place. Gave us a lot of food for thought. I've got a lot of notes on it. I have some follow-up to Matt. He did agree to come and just speak with the police union groups, so the membership of the unions. He'll come and just speak with them, one-on-one or get the questions answered. And I think that's important too, because this really impacts these guys. We made promises to them a long time ago that said, come and work for us and work, till you're 50 years of age and get your 25 years in, and we're going to take care of you, and this is what it's going to be. And we have to find out the best way that we can possibly do to live up to our promises. And I think we're approaching it that way. That doesn't mean we're not going to have to tweak it in some way in order to accomplish our goals for long-term sustainability.
Mr. Leavitt, in terms of defined benefit plan, and I'm not sure which, if the police unions are leaning towards any particular way of handling, obviously we want to reduce the cost for both them and for the township. But if we were to go down the route, and I don't know if they're leaning this way or not, of ending the defined benefit plan, but is that something that has to be mutually agreed upon, or?
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't just decide that, hey, we're going to end this thing.
Yeah, we've got to negotiate it. It's in the collective bargaining agreements. We have to negotiate it, so it's going to be a negotiated agreement one way or the other. Again, much like our healthcare was, retiree healthcare, we made some changes to it. We had it in there, what was going to be, what they had to pay and everything. We partnered with the union groups. We came up with a workable solution. We were able to address being 13% funded to now being nearly 60% funded. Quick turnaround in 5 years, the ability to go after it. I think it's just being honest about what kind of money we have available to us. Our pie isn't getting any bigger, and we talked about this ad nauseum over the last 6 years, but we finally hit our 2007 taxable value again with the March Board of Review of 2021. That's a long way to go from 2007 to 2021. Because when the recession hit, we lost property value. About 35 to 40% of property value disappeared overnight. Think about all the new growth we've had in this community since 2007. Think of all the new businesses, all the new homes. Even with all of that new growth, it took us 14 years to get back to the taxable value. And because we're a millage-driven organization, like most municipalities, it's the same holds for the county, because they're all millage driven. And you think of all the things when you look at your taxes and that long list of people who all have some mills on that tax thing, they're all millage driven. They all had the same thing. When our taxable value fell out, everybody's went down. And so it took us this long to climb up, yet our healthcare costs are considerably higher than they were in 2007. We were operating with about 12 fewer employees, all things being equal. Of course, in the meantime, we've picked up Parks and Recreation and Fire brought on. So I'm glad we're back at where we were revenue-wise. We lost a little bit of revenue sharing since that time, unfortunately. So I can't even say that we're back at the full revenue that we had in 2007. But we don't have, that was a heck of a claw back to get back here to get to that same revenue stream. So we can't throw, if money were no option, we could throw money on it, great, right? The best thing we can probably do is grow from an economic development standpoint. We need more business to come in, keep the taxable values up so that we have money, so that we're not asking the taxpayers to go up anymore. And this township has done an amazing job of that. Our mills, our operating mills are 4.4 mills. The average township taxpayer is paying 37 mills. if they have homestead exemption, a business is paying 57 mils. You know, when you think about that, out of all those mills you're paying into your taxes, 4.4 mils are what we're running the township on, and then the extra voted for mosquito, parks and rec, fire and police. You know, 0.9 for police, 0.95 for fire, 0.24 for parks and recreation, 0.2 for mosquito millage. I mean, it's not that's not a great deal of money that we have, and what we do when we produce, our raw materials are people, right? We provide services. So we can't, it's about cutting jobs. I can't get cheaper raw materials. It really is about, it's all about wages and benefits. And we take money in and we provide services with people. So it's not as easy as like finding $1 million out of another budget or out of another department, out of the general fund, because I can't find another $1 million.
So when it comes to cutting, it means getting rid of staff, basically. I mean,
That would be our option. 2 years ago, I ran it. It was between 74% and 92% of any single department. Is all people costs, wages, salaries, benefits, right? So when you think about that, how would we cut money to put at it? There is no extra money in that pie. We have so much. We just have to find a way to structure it, and we have to, you know. That's why I said the solution is tweaking the plan most likely, or you can stop the plan and go to a straight DC plan. But at least, you know, with all the options we're exploring, the millage is something that you guys should at least consider. If you are dead set, if the 7 of you are dead set against the millage, knowing that sooner rather than later is better for us from a negotiation standpoint as we work together to try to find the solution.
so do the police unions have a particular direction? I mean, ending the plan is obviously something that, I guess it could be reversed later, but it's pretty definitive when you do that. Is that something that they're leaning towards agreement on, or?
You know, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't go there. And certainly, in negotiations 3 years ago, we talked about, you know, ending the plan, bonding it out. You know, we started negotiation with the idea that having that defined benefit plan is an incredible recruitment and retention tool. One of the things you get when you weaken that plan is people become more nomadic. If they can come here, and if we have, say it was a straight defined contribution plan with a 7-year vest. 7 years from now, they're 100% vested, and the guy next door is paying $1 more an hour. They jump and go over there because, you know, they take the thing with us and they go. So it's one of the creation of those plans was kind of that idea is, hey, we've got something that the other people don't. You're going to get a pension check for the rest of your life. You know, but again, would the unions agree to end the plan? I mean, maybe, because at some point they're at 15.46%. What's going to happen with assumptions? Next year, are they going to be at 17%? You know, 3 years from now, are they going to be at 20%? Would that be sustainable? I mean, you got some guys sitting right here. I bet you the answer is no. Nobody wants 20% of their check coming out. So we have to find a solution. Doing nothing's not an option. We can't keep letting it go the way it's going. We have to find a workable solution.
Mr. Reardon, Dr. Reardon.
I, for one, would be in favor of looking at a millage or something to do this, because I think it's an important tool to keep the police, the people that we have. And 20% isn't sustainable, and I think 15% is really pretty high. So if, and I don't know if this is the proper forum to ask you this, and if it isn't, you don't have to answer, of course, but was there any consensus on what they were thinking?
That would be way too preliminary to get there, quite frankly, Dr. Reardon. This was more about let's get all of our options on the table and talk about them. We've got a year to figure it out, and or 10 months, you know, to try to figure it out if we want to get something done before contracts expire. You know, I think we want to, you know, like, look, nothing up my sleeve. I want, this is what's available to us. And I think we have to agree that these are the options available. And then we have to try to fine tune it. And I would say all three unions are willing to find a workable solution. Clearly, they want the promises that were made to them to continue. And it's probably a hard realization if you have to make changes. I mean, if you come to me and say, man, I got to make changes, I get it. So, but there's a solution out there. I think really, like, say the millage, would that be the most popular thing for these guys to, if the voters were to approve a millage and it's going to retire that debt and we don't have to change the plan? Sure, that would be amazing, right? Because it's going to change that right away. I think it might be a tough sell for you guys. It might be a tough sell for the voters who say, well, wait a minute, no changes to the plan. Why aren't you still exposing us to the potential that based on assumptions, you could start accumulating a whole new unfunded liability again? And the answer is yes. So if it became like, we'll close the plan, then would they agree if like, we're going to close the plan, bond it out, and you're going to get a defined contribution or a hybrid plan from this day moving forward? Everything you earned to this date is frozen, and then from this date forward is this plan? Maybe.
Well, I mean, I guess I would leave that, number one, I think if we just put it out and ask for a millage, or just put it out to the voters, let them decide, then if they want it, if they think it's an appropriate thing, they'll vote for it. Otherwise, I don't see any harm, no foul, because if they don't want it, they'll vote no.
And that's where I say, I agree that's an option for you guys, but then the language has to be very specific about what you're going to do.
Yeah, so I would say get the language real specific, and then I would also say, to you, when you negotiate, I mean, maybe it is from, April 1st, 2022, they go to a 2.25 multiplier, keep the 2.5 for every year they earned. I mean, I don't know. This is something that you'd have to negotiate, but I think we would want to get that squared away too, so the voters would know, what the deal is. And it'd have to be very specific, and I would agree.
Trustee Fike?
I would be dead set against raising property taxes to do this. And I think our taxes are too high. I agree with that guy who says, how about working to lower our taxes? I know that puts you in a terrible situation with the unions, and they deserve what we've told them, but we can't continue to have this problem year after year get worse. We've been chipping away at it, $1 million or so a year. I think we should continue that whole process of chipping away at it, as opposed to going to taxpayers and saying, I know you're on a fixed income, but can you pay a little bit more? I just don't think it will sell. We're not going to be able to sell that. And I'd be against it.
Clerk Robertson?
Yes, thank you. We've had, first of all, I am very pleased that this meeting of last week took place. I'm very pleased that the initiation for this meeting came from yourself, Dennis, on behalf of the board. I think that's a very strong indication of goodwill on our part. The fact that arithmetic knows no political party. The numbers are what they are, what they are. And the opportunity that the bargaining units have to hear directly from the source with regard to these retirement costs, I think is a valuable and important thing. It was an absolute necessity that we have them get the information directly from that source. I've said it before, but I agree with Trustee Fike here that I do not support the notion of a tax increase for this purpose. I think the board has demonstrated in the last year, better than a year that I've been on the board, that we are committed to taking money from existing resources and making aggressive efforts to retire or deal with the unfunded liabilities. And I think the board is to be applauded for doing that. I'm not, pat myself on the back, pat all of you on the back, okay, and the leadership that you're showing in this. I think that the best solution is to work within the arithmetic that we have there and massage the numbers, but work mutually with the bargaining units to keep our promises to them, But we cannot separate what we do. We are not operating in a vacuum here. You are quite correct when you say that people are paying a lot of taxes. We know that, as you mentioned, only four odd mills are ours. The rest belong to others. But we cannot, and as much as we might not agree with it, but the fact of the matter is that other taxing units are putting burdens on our taxpayers. Our school district just passed a bond millage a year ago, a little over a year ago, $40 million. Approximately $40 million, am I correct on that score? I think it's something like that. Nothing that we're doing here happens in a vacuum, and the taxpayers pay attention to these things. Our big picture, long-term interests are in solving this problem without raising taxes. I said this I think it was December, and I'll say it again. The best guarantor, really the only guarantor, ultimately, of our ability to maintain our promises and provide for your needs, pension and health care in retirement, is a growing Grand Blanc Township economy. And we need to keep that in mind at all times. And taxes and the amount of taxes that we pay are a big part of that. And that's why it is in your interest to see the problem solved without raising taxes as bargaining units, and it is in the interest of the citizenry, okay, to see that the taxes are not raised either. And I would also point out something. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. In my previous service in the legislature, this issue came up. And at that time, not surprisingly, because this is an issue all over the state, and it was the bargaining units for both police and fire that went out of their way to communicate to myself and all the members of the legislature that this was an issue that they wanted dealt with at the local level, that they wanted to be given the responsibility to do this. They did not want Governor Snyder and the state to supersede their negotiation efforts. And the legislature agreed and relented and passed a bill that was supported by the labor unions that represented police and fire to do precisely that, to give them the opportunity that they are now doing. And I think that from everything you've told me, Dennis, the bargaining units are working very well with you right now. You're working very well with them. That should continue. And that is how the challenges need to be addressed, is not raising taxes, working within the arithmetic, working in good faith, bargaining in good faith, but recognizing that we cannot raise taxes because we are not dealing in a vacuum. We're dealing with a larger tax picture, and our citizenry cannot afford tax increases at this time.
Yes.
I want to say, Governor Snyder raised our income tax for retirees and didn't offer a vote to the people. He didn't. And so apparently that's okay in that context. Secondly, I think our voters are smart enough to decide whether or not they think that can be afforded. If they don't think they can afford it, they can vote no. We're not forcing it on them. We're not raising the tax. We're just giving them the opportunity.
May I respond, Mr. Supervisor? I believe that real courage and real leadership is demonstrated when you find solutions to problems without raising taxes on an already overtaxed constituency. That a little bit here, a little bit more. Raising taxes is the quick and easy thing to go to. Just as Trustee Fike said a moment ago, just a little bit more here, just a little bit more there, rather than making tough, hard decisions to stay within our means. And we've done that. And let me be very, very clear on this. I'm strong on this point, adamant about this point, but I want to give credit where credit is due. Let us not forget that as a board, as the seven of us, over the last little over a year, we have dedicated millions of dollars to deal with unfunded liabilities in both the pension system and retiree health care. And that will continue. I'm confident that we will continue in that vein. So, we need to recognize the good work that we've already done, and all I'm suggesting is that we keep doing what we've been doing, because I think it bears real fruit and real results for our constituency and for these good people who wear uniforms and do the work that they do. I've never had to run into a burning building. I've never had to dodge bullets in my public service, but they do. and they need to be supported, and I do support them, and we all support them. But we have to find a solution to this by working cooperatively together without raising taxes, because that will lead to that will be the beginning of a downward spiral. People will notice it and they will leave, or they will not expand their businesses, even if they have a mind to. It will have an effect on decisions that are made by people in this community that could lead to greater prosperity. And again, ultimately, the solution for all of this is a growing Grand Blanc Township economy. We do not wish to suffer Flint's fate. We do not wish to suffer the fate of Flint Township and Burton and other places that have a much more severe problem with this than Grand Blanc Township does. And that's my message to my colleagues out here on the board, and my message to the citizenry at large, and to the gentlemen that are here. I thank you for participating with this meeting last week. We are operating in good faith here to try and solve these issues without raising taxes. And that is in our interest, and frankly, it is in your interest as well.
We have been paying down on this unfunded liability to a great degree, and thanks to Mr. Limita for his leadership in this area, even with the previous board, and getting that done. We're talking about approximately how much money, Mr. Limita, that we're looking at paying down total with 10 million?
Yeah, it's a little under $10 million right now, the current unfunded actuarially determined liability.
So we have been making some progress on it, but
Additional $1.6 million on it in the last 5 years.
if we continue going at the pace we have been, are we, I like to look at it as a credit card, basically, that we owe money on, but we're continuing to charge money on it at the same time. It isn't that the bill stays stagnant, that bill continues to increase, but are we just basically making the minimum payment, or are we actually paying down the principal?
Well, if I use your credit card analogy, you've got a variable interest rate because we don't know what assumptions are going to do or what the market return is. So 5 years ago, we were like, hey, we've got a $9.3 million liability that we need to address. Now we're like, hey, we got a $9.8 million liability that we need to address. We're treading water, but when you think about the way these have come up, I mean, initially it was locked down at 8% participation for employees, 15% for employers, with the idea that everything after that point will be split 50-50, and that's how we know now we're at 15.46 and 27.46. For example, 3 years ago, what I had, the solution that I was trying to push back then or negotiate was bridging it down to a 225 multiplier. That's the only change to the plan, going from a 2.5 to a 225. It absolutely has an impact, for these guys, because they earn whatever they've earned up until that change, and then after that it goes to that 225. What that would have done is lowered their contribution back to 8%, lowered ours to 15%, but then I wanted to put in contract language that at that point we were paying 22.67%. We would have put it in contract language that we would have continued to pay that additional 7.67 towards the unfunded liability as we move forward. Maybe that's still a workable solution. I don't know. We have to rerun actuarials to determine, because 3 years things change. We won't rerun actuarials until July, and the reason for that is because at the end of June you get your current actuarial through December 31st of the year prior. So I don't want to run them. They cost money to run. I don't want to run them before we have the new data, because a year can make a huge difference. I don't know what happened in 2021 actuarially speaking, but we'll rerun them in July, and we'll run them at a bridge multiplier. We can run them at different ideas of what the COLA looks like. We can run it if we closed the benefit and went to a hybrid, or we closed it and went to a defined contribution plan. For example, our defined contribution plan is 15%, which is very, very generous, very generous benefit. All other units, bargaining units, and all other non-represented employees outside of the police bargaining units get 15% defined contribution. They have the defined benefit plan. It's a great plan. I mean, it really is, and I think it really speaks well for, again, retention, is important to us, because, man, it's really hard to recruit people right now. It is really hard to find police officers. and, you know, having that benefit. But at the same time, if I bring you on and I say, I've taken 25% of your pay to go towards your pension plan, we're not getting anybody to come that way either. So there's a solution out there. We just have to work on it. You guys don't have to determine right now whether, like, even the millage thing, it's not a question I need to know right now. But if you're leaning towards that in any way, shape, or form, we got to define the language, and the board has to give us direction, you know, sometime at the end of March or whatever, so we can work through the ballot language.
I think, you know, as I take it you're going to be meeting with the police unions regularly, and isn't going to be, you know, next quarter or something. You'll be meeting with them regularly, even this quarter yet, I would guess, but.
Yeah, we're not into negotiations yet. We haven't formally started negotiations, but I think it helps us to continue to have informal meetings with MERS in the room so that we can continue to try to vet which options we're going to.
Because I think it's important that we know too, you know, what their thoughts are in terms of, you know, questions like, hey, what if we ended the plan and went to, you know, a hybrid or something, or any of the other options, which direction they would lean, because that's going to determine what this board, you know, sees as options too.
I think what the question that has to be answered, quite frankly, is the millage question. If there's even a remote possibility that the millage is going on, then we need to know that, because that changes the dynamics of everything. And it also changes the dynamics of how this board is going to formulate the strategy that you give me to negotiate. So millage is everything. If that's dead in the water, like it was 3 years ago, we were told that it wasn't moving, right? Then we know that that's not the solution we can pursue. And that's a big question mark. And so once I know that's off the table, you know, and I'll know if we did nothing and we open up negotiations in July and start moving forward, by then you're too late to get the ballot language in there, and we know that that's not a real possibility.
I'll tell you this, for any department here, whether it was Parks and Rec, or whether it's a rate increase for water, or whatever it might be, I'm in favor of looking at all other options before going to ask for more money from our water customers, or for our Parks and Rec users, or our citizenry. That it's the last option that I would want to look at on the whole list. I believe we need to honor what we've promised our employees over the years that have come to work for us and have been there day in and day out over the years, and for the people that we're hiring as we speak. But I also know that what we're doing now is untenable for our employees, asking them to pay, you know, could be upwards of 20-some% here shortly if we don't make some changes. And it's untenable for the township to continue paying percentages we are. I think we need to figure out a solution. I'm glad you're working with the unions, and I would encourage you to continue to, you know, explore all the options. But for me, you know, I would say that it's the last option on the list, and I would want to exhaust all other options first. So, and I know we're not trying to get consensus tonight on this, but, you know, and I don't want to put anybody in the corner to do that. But, and again, as Clerk Robertson said, we appreciate, you know, you going after this thing even before negotiations officially open. And I appreciate our officers being here as well and interested. It's a partnership. It has to work for everybody. So. Dr. Reardon?
I have to say something because I can't let it stand. Words have meaning, and we're not raising taxes. We're asking the citizens, unlike Snyder, who raised the taxes without asking. We're going to ask the people. We're not raising it.
Yeah. And again, you know, if we do put a millage on the ballot, it is, you know, unfortunately in our county, you know, we're the last ones to the trough. Everybody else has beat us over the years, and as Clerk Robertson mentions, that everybody and every entity in the county, and you know, and people on social media tell me that the taxes are too high here. I've got to point out that you need to look at all the entities that are taxing it. It isn't just us, but you know, we've got to solve this problem.
I agree.
And
if we can do it without the millage, I'm for it, but if we can't, we have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
do we vote on whether to proceed on this, or is that what you need, Dennis, from us?
I don't need it today, but I will, you just have to be, I raise it because you guys have to be cognizant of the deadlines for the ballot language. If the board was going to consider it, and we can do this, I mean, later, you guys are starting to develop negotiation strategy now. You can certainly, go into a closed session at some point at a future meeting to start to define your negotiation strategy and have that conversation. I don't want to put anybody on the spot here, and I don't need it right now, Trustee Fike, but the clock's ticking. We're getting into March, and if it is going to be a ballot question, then we have to have that answer sooner rather than later.
I think there's some particulars that would have to go into, a decision one way or the other. And I think that's part of the negotiation strategy I think that you need. But I think some of those details would have to be discussed. But, so I think maybe the next meeting, maybe we go into closed session and have some of those discussions.
Okay. I say let's vote, whenever.
Be agreeable to that?
I'm not ready for a vote tonight.
No, not tonight, but I mean, maybe the next
And,
meeting,
you know,
we can
the-
vote on whether to proceed with the,
Even before we have that vote, the public is probably going to weigh in one way or the other. I mean, our police have lots of support from the public, but we also have lots of people who feel their taxes are too high. So not that we're going to stick our finger up in the wind. I mean, we're going to make a decision here and do the leadership thing that our people elected us for, but we probably will hear from some people one way or the other.
all right.
So, yes, Mr. White?
Regardless, I don't know, can we get like a 1 or 2 page sheet that actually has numbers like on it? I mean, we're talking numbers sort of broadly, and I get that there's in here, but I feel like a lot of what we're talking about is not in that report, right? We're just sort of talking.
It is.
Correct? Or is it-
It is in the report as far as like the unfunded liability that you have. The numbers, like what does it look like if we ran the various scenarios? I won't have those till after July. Because, I could run them now, but they won't mean anything because you're going to be using 2-year-old data, right? We won't have the new data after the end of June. So that's the tough part about it. I know where you're coming from, especially this is your first time having to look at this as well as many of the board members. And so you haven't seen the valuation reports. I could show you the information that we ran 3 years ago, but it's not going to be relevant to today's numbers. Although that's one of the issues as we move forward. If we wait until, it takes 30 days to run these, so I wait till July when the new actuarial valuation's out, then a minimum 30 days to get the numbers, so we get them in August, best case scenario, at some point mid-August, for us to formulate our strategy. It's too late to put out a ballot question, so that's kind of why I'm saying that from a board's perspective, if the consideration of a millage is not even a remote possibility or it's not on the table from the consensus of the board at some point in the next 30 days, then I know we can take that off when we start to explore a completely different strategy.
Okay. Well, look forward to more interesting discussions. One thing that, I'm proud of our board in that we come to consensus on things, and I think this is an area where we will come to consensus as well in my mind. I don't see that as, we may have some disagreements tonight over this, but I want to come to a consensus as a group and, solve these problems together. And we got the extra challenge. It isn't just the 7 of us coming to consensus. It's coming to consensus with several groups that represent employees too. So we have our work cut out for us, and especially Mr. Limita. But I think it's important that we give Mr. Limita clear directions so that when he's negotiating, he knows what he can and can't say and do in terms of where our board's willing to go.
It's also about the transparency with the bargaining unit so that they know if we're not going to be pursuing a millage, that changes their internal conversations as well about what directions they're looking to go in. So not that we couldn't always do it sometime down the road, that would always be available, like a millage, question. But man, if it's like, if it's not going to happen during this negotiation session, then that's where our strategy formulation needs to be tightened up.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, next on the agenda, new business. The board will consider a motion to approve the purchase of a 2022 Vector sewer cleaning truck from Jack Doheny Companies for an amount not to exceed $530,000. Declare the 2015 Vector sweeper, or Vector sewer truck surplus equipment and authorize Township Superintendent to execute all purchase orders and agreements. Mr. Sears, or Director Sears? Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Before you tonight is a proposal to replace our current sewer Vector truck. I'm sure you've heard me talk about this piece of equipment often. I know I covered it in my budget presentation at the beginning of the year, or end of last year, rather. This combination sewer vac / jet truck may be the most important piece of equipment we have in our fleet. We maintain our sewer system with it pretty much year-round. We do all of our routine maintenance with it, not to mention our emergency maintenance that we have to do middle of the night, throughout the day, on weekends, whatnot. The truck we currently have right now is 2015. Generally, we like to keep this truck in a 5-year replacement program. The last truck we had for approximately 8 years. So we're 7 years now. I'm starting to catch up with the 5-year replacement program, but we're a little bit behind just because we've been waiting for some new models to come out. We've been watching them. We didn't necessarily want to be a test municipality this time. What you probably should know, in my CIP every year, I build these pieces of equipment into the budget. I build them into the rates. So as we go out through the year, I budget a certain amount of money that we set aside in our fund balance that pays for this equipment. So we do have the money in fund balance for this, along with capital projects. My Assistant Director, Greg Boggs, is here to answer any other questions you might have about the equipment, its use, the replacement, the truck that we're going to be replacing. We are going to try and sell it. We have a trade-in value for it, but I feel that the trade-in value is sort of low. And with today's market, I think we can probably get more money out of it by selling it. And we have up until we take delivery of the new truck to accept the trade-in value. So hopefully that'll work out in our favor. We can take any questions you might have.
I'm sure you've done the research on these sewer cleaning trucks. Is this like the Cadillac of trucks, or is this like the Chevy of trucks, or how would you describe this?
This is a Cadillac, for sure. There are Chevys, there are Fords, anything you can think of out there. This is a very nice truck. It's got all of the options that we're used to having with the amount of sewer cleaning that we do, which, as I'll say over and over again, I would argue that our sewer system is next to none, that we take extremely good care of it compared to other municipalities. This truck will last us. It gets the job done for what we need it for sure.
Any other questions? I know our mechanics work on them and keep them running as long as possible.
They do, when they can get them in the garage. It doesn't fit in our garage, mechanics garage. It's a shameless plug for the new building that we want to build also. But they do, they keep it running. We do have a vendor, Jack Doheny, that they're the only company that makes these trucks and maintains them, so we do use them quite a bit for repairing it also. But yes, our mechanics do very well by keeping us on the road. They're very comfortable with this truck, and they've done a lot of research on the chassis. Our computer systems will work with it to keep it updated, and any kind of diagnostics we have to do also.
Do you have any other questions? I'll make a motion. Okay. Mr. Fike makes the motion, supported by Ms. Hugo.
Ms. Hugo, support. Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, the board will consider a motion to purchase or the purchase of a 2022 Chevrolet Traverse to be used by the DPS administrative team from Berger Chevrolet for $27,863. And authorize Township Superintendent to execute all related purchase orders and documents. Mr. Sears?
So in our CIP, our vehicle replacement schedule for this year, we have to replace a pickup truck that our administrative staff uses. Finding a pickup truck right now for government pricing is very difficult. We can't get them. If we can order them and maybe get them by the end of the year, maybe not. So we had a Traverse before. It worked out very well. We switched to a pickup truck this past, or 2 years ago. We can get our hands on a Traverse now, so we're asking for approval for a Traverse. The pickup truck that we're replacing will go to code enforcement, so we'll sell it to the general fund, to the code enforcement department, which is budgeted for a new vehicle. Since we've added a code enforcement officer, we'll have 3 out on the road. We currently only have 2 vehicles. So it should help out both departments in the end.
Yes, Mr. White? Okay, motion by trustee White,
Motion by White.
supported by trustee Fike.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sears. Okay. We had superintendent's performance evaluation on the agenda. We are going to ask that we table that until next meeting. All of you should have received communication from Attorney Laddie. We want to make this a painless process for the board as well. It basically, you all received a copy of the evaluation form. Mr. Limita has put his comments in each of the sections, and all we ask is that you check off the box in the various areas and maybe make a note or two under each of those. And then you email it back to Attorney Laddie.
So if you have submitted something and you want to amend it or supplement it, feel free to do that. For those of you that haven't, then the sooner the better, and we'll get it all compiled and aim for 2 weeks from tonight.
Exactly. Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Future agenda items. Mr. Limita, strategic plan item that we want to cover next?
Well, I'm not bringing up unfunded liabilities again. No.
We're never covering that again.
Let me know so I can move down a little.
I assure you that will be on the agenda again, but probably not in 2 weeks. Although, like I said, we've got to have that conversation. Maybe the negotiation strategy should begin to start being formulated in the closed session somewhat. I don't know where you guys want to go next on the strategic plan. I didn't give a lot of thought before today about what you guys might want to see. If you've got an idea or an update that you want to have, if you want to reach out to me and let me know. Otherwise, we'll go back through to see the ones that we have the most changes to address. I know one that we have to discuss, and we talked about it in January, was the rental housing. We had brought it up during the strategic plan about creating that rental housing inspection program. That was pushed to, it wasn't designed until starting until first quarter of 2022. We are in Q1 2022, so we need to move that forward. I have been collecting some information on it with a mixed bag. I'm a little apprehensive on how deep you guys want to go, so that may be a good conversation to dive in and really talk about, starting to define what that means to you guys when we talk about that rental housing inspection program.
Okay, where are we at with, not that I want an update right now, but I know one of the things that Mr. Smith and Planning and Zoning is working on is a whole list, and I think with Mr. Laddie as well, of revisions. And I know with spring coming, we have a few items that we want to tackle before too long in terms of any changes that we want to make. So are we going to be prepared in the next month or two to start looking at some of those?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted those addressed in spring of 2022 to start moving through. And again, if you look at Planning and Zoning Administrator Smith's zoning manual, you'll see a multicolored sticky note sticking out of this thing everywhere for recommended updates and changes. He and I have gone through a lot of these. He's working with Jill Boehm from Giffords Webster to update these. It is not as simple as you might think, because you have to go back, make sure there's legal ramifications. Attorney Laddie gets involved to look through to see if there's anything that, we're creating that would have legal ramifications. A lot of it's, quite frankly, is a lot of just some cleanup things that have come over, and anytime you're doing this, you start looking if there's a specific thing that is requiring a lot of zoning board of appeals has to continue to look over the same problem, then there's a problem, especially if they're being granted. For example, like the decks in one of the Pulte subdivisions we had where the setback wasn't allowing enough. They were selling these homes, and then people would go to put their own decks on. So every time somebody bought a house, they'd have to go to the zoning board of appeals, pay $400 and whatever. So then we ended up having to go in and change it. So we're looking through all of those because we want to make sure that, we don't have to keep coming back to you, but it's a process. I know he's working, with Jill. I know Attorney Laddie's being asked to review. I think you'll see it within the next, through, potentially in March or beginning of April.
Well, it's probably going to make a run by your planning commission too. So if there is a handful of items that you want pulled forward, I don't know if that's a possibility to kind of move them up on the.
I'm just thinking of a key.
RV?
I'm not mentioning it.
We have three
I get
things.
roasted every time I mention that word, so
Yeah.
there's a couple of issues that we probably need to look at. And,
Would you like to see it sooner rather than later?
um,
You want to mix it into a dozen, or you want to deal with that one on its own?
I don't know, I'm going to leave that to your discretion, but I just wondered so those are in progress, basically, at this point, so.
Correct.
Okay. Well, maybe Mr. Lehman and I will look over what we want to cover next on the strategic planning for the next meeting then. We'll come up with something. Okay, moving on to board reports. Ms. Hugo, anything with regard to planning?
Nope. Our next meeting is March 3rd.
Okay, very good. Zoning Board of Appeals.
No update.
Mr. White, okay. Mr. Fike, Metro Alliance.
Tomorrow is the meeting, and Lauren Crandall will be attending
Okay.
for us. And it's supposed to be a big one because all the road projects for Genesee County for next year are going to be unveiled.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have a few of them in there. Dr. Reardon, anything with regard to police? Okay. Treasurer Kilmer, anything? Okay. Clerk Robertson?
Yes, a small item. You'll remember in previous conversations at the board level, I mentioned that there was a millage renewal affecting a small part of Grand Blanc Township that lies within the Lake Fenton School District. The Lake Fenton Board has rescinded their resolution and have decided to hold the renewal, I believe, either in August or November of this year. So we will not be having an election in May. That, I wanted you folks to be aware, and that's good news.
Yes. Okay, so a few things with the freeze-thaw cycle happening. You're seeing lots of potholes and lots of road repairs that need to be made. And I'm starting to see on social media the things that need to be taken care of. And I know over the weekend there was an article posted about the new, wonderful office development that's going to happen off Baldwin Road. And it turned into a whole discussion on lots of things. First off, just to say, our commercial properties, the development, as we talked about earlier, is what's going to fund not only pensions and retiree health care, but it's also going to continue to fund everything from our schools to our general fund for paying for police, fire, and township services. So somehow some residents thought it's going to cost us money to have the added businesses in that area. The situation with Cook Road, I just want to make mention of it because it seems to be getting a lot of attention. It is in horrible shape between Embry Road and Holly Road. And that section of Cook Road, from what we've been informed, needs to be rebuilt entirely. The early days of Genesee County, when a road was paved, they didn't necessarily go to the extent that they go to now with laying several layers of sand and gravel and things that allow for drainage. They basically took the earth that was there, which is mainly clay, took some dry concrete mix and basically tilled it into the soil and then rolled it, and then put asphalt on top of it. And so there is absolutely no drainage whatsoever. And then after that, just put layer and layer of asphalt on top of it. And that's the situation with Cook Road between Embry and Holly Road, is that it's just a massive amount of clay with asphalt piled on top of it. We could have the county pave it, and we could contribute to it and with the money that they provide us, and it would be a fix for probably 2 years, and you'd start seeing the same thing happen again. What the county is proposing is totally rebuilding it, basically digging it out. It's way too much higher than it should be, but digging it out completely and rebuilding it, putting the proper drainage in, what have you. The problem is that the federal funds that they would use to do it are not going to be here for a couple more years. It's in really rough shape right now. They've been patching it quite a bit, and we'll encourage them to continue patching it. But our feeling is that we want to have it rebuilt. We don't just want a short fix, but we're going to have to endure a couple of years of rough road and probably lots of patching. And this time of year, the asphalt plants aren't open. And so it's going to be cold patch that actually comes out of it, as soon as they put it in. So with that said, the other issue that comes up is subdivision streets, that we should be paying for subdivision streets. And I keep explaining to the public that in Michigan, townships do not receive road funding, and county road commissions don't receive funding that enough to allow for paying for subdivision streets to be paved. But somehow I'm going to come up with something that we can communicate to our residents so that I know it's a continual education process on how subdivision streets work. So we'll attempt to do that. With regard to the 911 consortium, so 911 service, we have hired Fahey Schultz, law firm, to write an opinion and a resolution based on wherever they come up, what they come up with. They've asked for a whole list of items from the 911 consortium in terms of agreements and bylaws, what have you. They also have spoken with the Genesee County Medical Control Board, which basically sets up the rules for how things operate in this township with regard to emergency medical services. And so they're working at it as we speak. I had a meeting today. Chief Wiles was there. That was an advisory board. Basically, I probably wasn't supposed to be there, but it was a meeting for the police chiefs and fire chiefs, I believe. But I attended it, and sounds like right now they have about 13 municipalities that have said that they want to go the exclusive route, and all of them with MedStar EMS. And so they haven't submitted all their paperwork, but it looks like they're working towards doing that. But I'm also hearing from a number of municipalities that are eager to see what our attorney opinion is that we'll receive, and to use that as guidance for their township to make a decision on which way to go. So that vote will take place, I think, in March is what we're looking at in terms of at the 911. However, it may not be real rapid. I don't know. There's a huge software changeover right now with 911 consortium and all of the various police and fire departments, and that changeover with any technology has run into some snags, which I think may delay how quickly, even if it was voted in that these exclusive are allowed, it will delay how quickly it can be implemented, I believe. So by maybe quite a while. So we'll see. So we're working diligently, and we'll continue talking to the other townships and making sure that they're aware of whatever our attorneys come up with. Okay, thank you. Mr. Feig?
I don't know if this is a time to ask this, but I got a text from a constituent who asked, will garbage collection be delayed a day this week because of President's Day?
No.
Nope.
Isn't that the question you're probably getting?
Yes, it happens every time there's any
Federal holiday.
holiday, if you will, on Monday. But
Trying
the
to
answer is
save
no,
you
it
a
will
few
be on-
phone calls, Dave.
Yes, thank you very much, Trustee Fike.
I think we posted on social media.
All right, all right,
And,
Pickup day is Wednesday.
all right. Thank you.
There are only 3 occasions in this calendar year where it is different. They are the after Memorial Day, because of the fact that July 4th falls on the day that it does, it'll be the July, and in September after Labor Day. Only those 3 weeks. All other weeks, it is Wednesday, and Wednesday all day, okay?
We'll make, yeah.
I'm happy to, shout
Spread the
that.
word.
If in doubt, put it out.
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fike. Hopefully, everybody watching will spread the word. With that, Attorney Laddie, anything to report?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Mr. Lemata?
Teresa Wood passed her level 3 exam, we formerly called level 3 for an assessing officer. So she is now a certified Michigan Advanced Assessing Officer, which is a big deal. It's pretty awesome. We're very proud of her, and it brings more expertise to our assessing department. When we have to go into Michigan tax tribunals and defend our valuations, it always helps that we are led by a level 4 assessing officer. We've got 2 level 3 assessing officers. We've got the newest one, Annalisa, who's embarking on her level 2. And so it's just exciting. We like to recognize when an employee continues to work hard, puts in a lot of hard hours. This is not an easy thing to do. That's a big certification. So hats off to Teresa Wood. The other thing is that you're going to hear a story will be coming out soon about 3 of your firefighters who were up doing some snowmobiling in the UP this past weekend, and they saved some lives. So watch for that story. It's coming out. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. Deputy Fire Chief Kent Miracle is writing up a thing now, and I think it's awesome. It just shows the caliber of the folks who are up there, and they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. We're able to assist in some CPR and save some lives. So watch for that story, but that's a great story, and just a reflection of the heroes that we have working for us, both in police and fire department uniforms.
Very good. Okay. Anything else?
Is the motion to adjourn in order, Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Well, then I'll make it.
Okay. Supported by Trustee Reardon.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We are adjourned at 8:48 this evening.